And next we move on to entrepreneurship development program. It's always a program which helps in developing entrepreneurial abilities, the skills that are required to run a business successfully is developed among students through this program. And sometimes students might have the skill, but it requires polishing and incubation. We invite Mr. 𝐷𝐷𝐷𝐿 to share his thoughts on effective implementation of EDP. So 𝐷𝐷𝐷𝐿 sir is the founding team member of the International Center for Entrepreneurship and Technology. He has over 40 years of professional experience in various fields including hardcore engineering, management consulting, mentoring, academic teaching and advisory in policy making. He is an active mentor also with Startup India, and he is frequently invited to speak at conferences and conduct training programs for professionals, managers, students and teachers. He's also a board member in many academic councils and board of studies and leading universities and academic institutions. I hand over the stage to you, sir.
Thank you. Namaskar, Adab, good morning. कुछ अर्सा पहले एक ऐसे ही समारोह के लिए कोई मुझे आमंत्रण देने आए थे। मुझसे कहने लगे कि आप आके कुछ मीठा बोलिएगा। तो मैंने कहा मैं या तो सच बोलूँगा या मीठा बोलूँगा, क्योंकि बचपन से सुनते वो सोच में पड़ गए कि सज्जन क्यों ऐसा बोल रहे हैं। मैंने कहा आप जरा गौर से सोचिए, बचपन से आप क्या सुनते आए हैं, सच या तो मीठा होता है, ऐसा कभी सुना है आपने? कड़वा होता है या तीखा होता है, सच मीठा नहीं होता। तो मैं मीठा बोल नहीं सकता, मैं सच बोल सकता हूँ। और सुनने वालों में ये सहन शक्ति होनी चाहिए कि वो तीखे चीज़ को भी सुन सके। The next 30 minutes or 30-40 minutes that I will spend with you may in parts appear like a villain in a cinema. But absence of a villain does not complete the cinema. So before and after you'll have good heroes to come, talk, sing, dance and make the environment very romantic. But it's the villain who will add some spice. So next 40 minutes you'll watch a villain show. Please bear with me. So first is really to clarify the notions of entrepreneurship, romanticizing, so to say. Very important to understand that my previous speaker did pick this up a little, to say what is different with today's startups. And oftentimes one gets kind of little lost and confused. So if you see here, the types of entrepreneurship, one is the classical type, which is to say doing business, be part of a value chain. For example, distributor. That you're still part of the value chain that will goes out there. Or you have a Me Too product, which is more like making power supplies. Or an innovative business like a countdown meter in a traffic signal. Or disruptive businesses, which is like Amazon or mobile technology or deep tech and so on. And of late you can see GPT-4, Google DeepMind that's coming in. Most of the new value leveraging that happens, contemporary startups are all about leveraging next-gen technology. And most of what I'm going to talk is contextual to that nature of entrepreneurship, leveraging emerging technology space. So what is really next-gen entrepreneurship like? Bit of it you can see here. Either you do new things, or you do things better, or you do things at lower cost. So there you have things like mobile phones, or you have new batteries for cell phones, or you have something like low-cost mobiles, or in fact, 𝐼𝐴 Eye Hospital, which is able to bring down intraocular lens, $4, $8 versus $100. And that is kind of the differentiator there. So what does it really take? First and foremost, making entrepreneurship as a career of choice and not of compulsion. I get greatly worried when people say that I want to become an entrepreneur, but they want to become an entrepreneur for wrong reasons. The first common reason is, I don't want to do a 9-to-5 job. I don't want to be answerable to a boss. And the first clarity you need to give there is, if you become an entrepreneur, your job is 24/7, and you don't have one boss, you have multiple bosses. Your supplier is your boss, your employee is your boss, your investor is your boss, your colleagues are your boss, your co-founder is your boss, your spouse, of course, is always will be your boss. So this whole notion of saying that why should I be asked questions and why should I be answering is a myth that people think will not happen if they take up entrepreneurship. And that, I think, is very, very important for young people to remember. That when you go and work in large organizations, this notion of saying I am answerable to somebody and somebody will be my boss is not a deterrent. And to think that when you go into entrepreneurship you will not be answerable to anybody is a complete myth. The second thing is a mindset that's very different than from an employee. As I said, this is a 24/7 job. It all boils down to a lot of self-confidence, perseverance, aiming high, and demanding self and others. So demanding from self is very, very core to the DNA of an entrepreneur. Learning to live with ambiguity. When you work in large corporates, you have defined budgets, you have defined plans, you have targets, you have quarterly reviews, you have annual reviews, you have half-yearly reviews. When you're in a startup and you become a tech entrepreneur, no matter what plans you have made for tomorrow, when you wake up tomorrow morning, everything goes for a toss. And almost 90% of it is something that you have not prepared yourself for. Learning to live with ambiguity becomes a very, very important aspect of being an entrepreneur. In the Indian social context, support from friends and families becomes a very key thing. Especially failure in this country is still considered to be a stigma. We have mothers who kind of fret if the child fails in a drawing exam. How does it really matter, right? But still mothers fret and they will try to send the child to a craft class or a dance, or a drawing class, simply because the overall grades went down because the child did not do well in drawing. And little does the system realize that not everybody is cut out to be good at maths, physics, biology, drawing. Every single human being is unique and different. And our academic system produces only examinees. We don't produce students. And I don't think our system has yet come to terms with itself to say that if we want to progress as a society, we want to become creative. And that's one reason why India is not able to come up with creative products. We're still okay with some services, but we don't see enough creative products. Because creative products need inherent curiosity and they need the power of questioning, both of which we systematically kill in our education system. Our system only teaches us how to crack exams, and therefore we produce examinees. We don't produce students. When you go into entrepreneurship, you have to be ready for the long haul. It's not a 100 meters dash. It's a marathon race. wealth creation for the right motives. And making money and creating wealth has to be a consequence of doing many, many things right at the right time and in the right manner and for the right purposes. If entrepreneurs start out a journey by saying, wealth creation is my sole motive, they've started with the wrong objective in life. Wealth creation has to be an outcome of doing many other things right. It's very important appreciate the whole journey of entrepreneurship. And it's like a multi-stage rocket. First, taking the plunge. Next, finding a good pain point and work on an idea that then builds into a commercial value. One of the problems with most startups and young students who come out today, and in fact the way we promote startups in the academic system, is we focus more on ideas. All our hackathons, our competitions, all of it is around best ideas. Nobody talks about best problems. And therefore we get obsessed with solutions. We don't get obsessed with pain points. If you get obsessed with solutions, there's only a limited runway for your venture. If the DNA of the venture and the founders is one about constantly looking for problems and solving pain points, then there's a great chance that they will be able to have a build to last company. Otherwise, you'll have a 6, 7, 8, 10 year, maximum 15-year runway. You'll soon disappear. Third is actually building a business which can capture market, and fourth is sustaining and growing. And most enterprises come and get stuck there because growth pangs are very, very different than the early stage pangs. And what got us here will not get us there. Most enterprises tend to use a rear view mirror to look in the front. And they try to replicate what they did in their early years to be able to think that that is what will work in the growth years. And a lot of enterprises and entrepreneurs fall in that valley. And that's the most difficult crossroad that every entrepreneur has to really traverse. The total time typically is about 3 to 7 years. And in a country where people expect the ward has gone to an engineering school, we spent multiple lakhs for the first 4 years, we want return on investment. It's an irony that campuses and colleges sell their courses piggybacking on the number of placements that they do. And in the same university campus, you also want to sell the myth of entrepreneurship. They are both actually 180 degrees opposite each other. The mindset required to go and work for an organization and the mindset required to set up an organization are vastly different, which is where the second part of my talk is going to focus on, which is where people who run an EDP center, EDP programs and run an entrepreneurship cell in universities and academia will have to be faced with such questions. Even after those 3 to 7 years, success globally is less than 10%. So look at this whole multi-stage rocket and then ask yourself whether you are prepared for the journey. Don't get into entrepreneurship because somebody says so. Don't get into entrepreneurship because business newspapers flash sexy headlines that say, we have yet another unicorn. They don't tell you the truth. And truth has to be discovered. And you have to have the spine to be able to withstand the truth. The truth in an entrepreneurial journey is harsh, is unforgiving. But the few who are able to traverse it will really go the long haul. So success requires being at the right place, at the right time, with the right team, with the right idea, and with the right business plan. And then be able to execute it right. Most of the times when I address students, I start out with my very popular one line saying, idea में दम नहीं होता है, करके दिखाने में दम होता है. Ideas dime a dozen. If I get down at Dadar railway station, the boot polish kids there will have far more wonderful ideas than some of the best entrepreneurs we have in universities or in Silicon Valley. But they don't have the other wherewithal to be able to translate that idea into an operating business. So the real challenge is not about ideation. The real challenge is being able to convert it into a meaningful venture. So what are the typical kind of dilemmas you have before you found a venture? How will it really affect in my career? What timing is right? I'm passionate about an idea, but I haven't accumulated the right experience. The market is not receptive to my idea, but I think it's a brilliant one. And this is one of the most common problems. लोग मुझे समझते नहीं. You'll have so many young, bright engineers and scientists walk into a business plan competition, come out very sad, saying that this panel just did not understand what I was trying to tell them. I have such a brilliant idea. What might be brilliant to you may not really be attractive in the marketplace. A lot of young people come out and say, I faced this problem and therefore I tried to solve it. But how many people in the world are facing the same problem that you are? Is there enough market? You might have if really brilliant scientific ideas were to make into good businesses, then all our laboratories in this country funded by ministries of science and technology would have churned out millions of entrepreneurs by now. Our scientists have remained scientists. Very few have become entrepreneurs. If they had all the brilliant ideas in the world, they would have become million entrepreneurs. They haven't. Because they all fall into this bracket. I have a brilliant idea. But the world does not understand. My current personal circumstances are unfavorable. This is a pure India context. And very often one has to empathize with this situation, because you have a lot of promising young people who can understand a pain point, come up with bright ideas, have a sound value proposition, but they are lost in the wilderness because they have a family to support, they have two sisters to get married, they have to pay back a house loan, they have to pay back their education loan. We don't have a reliable social security system in this country. The odds are heavily stacked against an aspiring entrepreneur. And that is the truth. So unless and until you don't have these favorable circumstances, don't plunge. Should I take the plunge anyway? And that's going to be the natural question. Because you'll also have peer pressure. You'll have some classmates who made it big. Some VCs came and funded a bunch of other classmates. But simply because they got funded, it does not mean you will get funded. You may have a better idea. As far as timing is concerned, there's really no thumb rule, and it varies from different cultural settings. Much earlier, in a study done in the 90s, most founders in the US had worked for 14 years before they set up a startup. Technology founders averaged about 13 years of prior work experience. Those in life sciences had about 16 years of work experience. 35 founders had worked 20 years or more before founding, including 47 who came from life sciences background. distinct subset found that only 0 to 4 years work experience were there. Between 1950s and 1990s, a multi-decade study in 2007 found that average age dropped to 12.5 years. Entrepreneurship transitioning from a midlife career change to an early option is something that we've seen in the last dozen years or so. Israel, and we talk about Israel like a startup nation, most entrepreneurs in Israel are of 40 years of age. So when we talk about Israel as a startup nation, we read only the headline. We don't read the tagline. The tagline is, most people have 20 years work experience there. That's what makes them succeed. India, while the launch age bracket ranged from 19 to 48, the median age of launching a business has been 27. And sometimes I get very pained when I address students and they stand up from the crowd saying, I ask, who is your inspiration in the startup? They say, Steve Jobs. I ask why? They say, he was a college dropout. So, you can't infer every college dropout to become as successful as Steve Jobs. He says, हमको क्लास नहीं अटेंड करना है, हमको टर्मिनल एग्जाम नहीं देना है. We want to spend time in the lab, in the garage, because we'll come up with bright ideas. Education doesn't matter. We want to take a few isolated heroes and make them as the norm. And that's the tragedy of this country. We handpick isolated examples and we convert it into a normative phenomenon. That's very misleading to young people. We are doing disservice to this generation, both in the media and as institutions and as academicians and as people as mentors and funders. We need to be honest to ourselves with the heart in the right place and tell ourselves that our advice matters in the future of these young people that we are addressing. There is a twist in the trade, and the twist is that a working or an earning spouse can be very crucial to entrepreneurship. It may sound a little jovial, but it's true. There is somebody to pay your loans with a steady income in the house, gives you better courage to plunge into entrepreneurship. A survey of founders of high growth businesses found that 70% were married when they founded and 60% had at least one child. If you don't have 100% emotional support of your spouse, wait until you have so. खुद तो डूबेंगे ही, तुमको भी ले डूबेंगे सनम. The trade-off between passion, aspiration of oneself, and obligation to the other is something that we've not built sensitively into our system. And unfortunately, we are aping the Western world. We are increasingly becoming a Me Too society. We're exceptionally self-centered. And therefore, you see, the new generation wants to think very hard about marriage. Most of them don't want to get married. Many of them don't want to have children. And the popular Bombay language was DINGS, double income, no kids. Survey has shown that people with spouse who do not work are less likely to become entrepreneurial. So those in the crowd who are on the brink of venture and adventure, think hard. If you are in the marriage marketplace and if you are looking for a spouse who already is working somewhere or has a steady income, your chances of becoming a successful entrepreneur are higher. But if you peel the layer of that onion, there is a much deeper social story that we are obligated to. And that social story is, we must increasingly invest in our girl child. We must give encouragement, access and support for young girls to get educated, to come out and experiment, to be able to try things on their own and be self-confident. We must allow them to snap out of this male chauvinistic society. They are, if not more, at least as equal as men. That is an obligation we owe to the society. What they don't teach you at business school is to make sure that your life partner is in sync with what you are doing. You can divide your 24 hours into 3 parts. 8 hours work, 8 hours personal, 8 hours sleep. If your 8 hours is not in sync with your 8 hours of work, then your 8 hours of sleep will suffer. So there are complex questions when one wants to treat into entrepreneurship. Is my family situation conducive for a startup? Have I accumulated enough experience? Is my idea good enough, or is my passion misleading me? Will my spouse be supportive of the things when things get tough? And all early influence matters. When founders are greatly influenced by family and cultural surroundings in which they grow up. So children who come up from business families would have heard a lot of business stories along the dining table. So the grandfather and the father will always talk about business. It runs in their DNA. The children pick it up. And that is where you also learn about how to manage people, how to manage money, how to manage markets, how to raise money, how to recover money, which in today's business is one of the biggest challenges. You make a sale. In the old family businesses, we had a Vasuli Munim. बही खाता तो कोई लिखता था, लेकिन जाके कोई पैसा उगरानी भी करता था. Gujarat, from the state from where I come, the old traditional businesses had an ugrani clerk. His job was just to go around the full month and collect money from wherever it was due. It's a job to be done. Risk-taking exposure at school and in college, which is where other elements like sports matter so much. Our schools have a class for PT, physical training. Physical training classes are actually meant to coach you for life, not to teach you how to run. They are supposed to teach you how to play in teams. They are supposed to teach you how to manage interpersonal relationships. They are supposed to teach you how to strategize a game, how to think about an opponent. Most importantly, they are supposed to teach you how to lose. Last evening, Rahul Dravid was speaking on a ceremony to do with CSR for sportsmen. And he said, good athletes do not get into athletics to win a medal. They take up sports to remain fit human beings. Winning a medal turns out to be a consequence of being a fit human being. Our PT classes don't focus on making us fit human beings. It's another class to be attended as part of your curriculum. The place where you could teach most lessons of life is the place where they actually mess around with life. So we lose all these opportunities. You were mentioning about, both of you were mentioning about introducing entrepreneurship courses early in school. You should bring all elements of entrepreneurship in the playground. And I'll talk about it a little later. Environment in academic sets up. Now you, of course, you have incubators, you have intellectual property cells, you have research parks, you have consulting professors. Consulting professors still in India is not encouraged. It's still seen like they are compromising on the coursework and doing consulting. But that's not true. Look at the Western world, you look at Silicon Valley, you look at Oxford University, you look at Cambridge, you look at Technion in Israel, look at Finland, look at Norway, look at Netherlands, look at Japan. Look at the way academic professors get so intimately involved with their students and student startups. In India, we want to see it in isolation. You have to get academia to collaborate and professors to collaborate in ventures. Google is a great example. The two kids, Sergey and Sam, they worked under an Indian professor who actually mentored them trying to create Google. His role was very great, Motwani. He passed away, of course, in a tragic road accident. So when does one plunge? When you have favorable career circumstances, favorable personal circumstances, favorable market circumstances. In every individual's life, one has to look for that sweet spot. What am I good at doing? What gives me joy? Where lies the opportunity? More often than not, young people get sucked into one of those circles. Either they're too passionate about what they love to do, and they get obsessed with the so-called idea in their mind, and they are very far removed from the reality of the marketplace or the opportunity. This is what we should be teaching them. This has to be the first course in entrepreneurship. And just this one slide needs to be taught for 2 weeks, at least. Left to me, I will teach for 1 month. Because each of these circles needs great, deep amount of reflection, self-introspection, looking around, keeping your antenna up, eyes and ears open and nose to the ground, understanding pain points, knowing your limitations, discovering what gives you joy. That's a very tough question to answer. People live for 90 years and die and have not been able to answer what did they really have joy for in life. ढूंढते ही रह गए. The 3 circles are not very easy to answer, but they are very important to answer. And if we don't do this first chapter in entrepreneurship correctly, the rest needs to go down the flush. What do entrepreneurs and enterprises need? First is, of course, human capital. Explicit knowledge, often but not necessarily derived from formal education, and tacit skills from prior experience. How much have they dirtied their hands? Rare for a founder to have all the skills and knowledge. Somebody may have very deep technical knowledge but is not able to handle other things. So one very popular exercise that I do with my students and mentees is to ask them to write down in their pads 3 columns. What is it I am good at? What is it that I can learn? What is it that I can never do or I never wish to do? And I ask them to fill the column 3 first, because that's easy to tell. कितना भी मुझे लात मार लो, मुझे फाइनेंस समझ में नहीं आएगा. That's an easy thing to tell. So you make this list of things that you're not good at or you can never learn. Then there are things that you have fundamental aptitude but you can learn. So then it's a question of access, time, and some resources. And then there are things that you are naturally good at. Why this is important is it will help you discover, find out that this is not a lone man's journey. Entrepreneurship is all about teaming. It's all about finding supplementary and complementary skill sets. But who will you find? Don't go and find a classmate because he was a good benchmate and you shared the tiffin box with you. Don't get somebody because he was your partner in a cricket match. Don't get somebody because he was your hostel mate. Get that somebody for the right reasons. Does he or she fill in a gap that you are not able to fill? So this whole emphasis on complementary and supplementary skills is the second important lesson we need to teach. And founders who lack industry experience may be blindsided to problems that could have been anticipated by industry veterans, and which is where it's very important for mentors and life coaches to get involved with young entrepreneurs. Very important that you have young entrepreneurs have sounding boards. My very popular line is that even the best barber in town needs a mirror when he shaves. Close your eyes and think for a minute. सारी दुनिया की हजामत करता है, खुद की हजामत करनी होती है तब उसको आईने की जरूरत है, और आईना सच बोलता है. और सच देखने की काबिलियत होनी चाहिए, हिम्मत होनी चाहिए, हुनर होना चाहिए. Truth is hard to face, but it's important for us to prepare young people to face the truth. The next they need is social capital. How well positioned you are in information and communication network, recruitment, suppliers, business partners, potential ventures. Unless the core people have rich contacts, it may be worthy to look for co-founders who have good contacts. The third is financial capital. People who can bring money. Entrepreneurship is capital intensive. By the time you see revenues and profit lines, you will need money to sustain. The whole notion of entrepreneurship can be learned but cannot be taught. And for some of you who are academicians, you should be quite familiar with the difference. The teaching learning process is very complex. Not everything can be taught and not everything can be learned. And entrepreneurship is one area which is all about learning, less about teaching. Well, some of these things I can just kind of skip over. Let me come to the place where I'll just pick up some points to say what is important where. Entrepreneurship is all about founders having their arms around the business. Especially in technology entrepreneurship, you come across founders who are very comfortable in their comfort zone of technology. As I say, marketing मेरे को नहीं संभालना, raising money not my cup of tea, doing sales, no, managing people, अरे बिल्कुल नहीं, understanding finance books, not my job, get an accountant. If that is the response that individuals have, the chances of lugging out the entrepreneurial journey is very, very little. That is not to suggest that you need to become a specialist in each of these verticals. But having arms around the business implies that you understand the need and be sensitive about each of these elements that can make the business successful. You can't afford to be blind to all of these. And the most important part is that you're dealing with human beings. As teachers, as entrepreneurship development cell mentors or heads, when young students come to us for advice, they are seeking help in their career and they are trusting you. Tell them the truth. Don't breach the trust. So what are the typical questions that one might be asked when you're running an EDC? I have everything but an idea. And this is what you need to tell them. Go sniff the ground. Go and participate in problem hackathons, not idea hackathons. Attend conferences, track successes, more so failures. Question 2, but I am not armed for the battle yet, especially career founders. Find a job to fill or a functional role like an intern if you are just in the final year of college or something like that. It's good to go and intern with a startup. Don't look for a stipend, look for experience. Go smell the kitchen there. See what the chef does. कौन सी तरकारी खरीदता है, कब खरीदता है, सुबह क्यों खरीदता है, शाम को क्यों खरीदता है, किसमें कितनी मिर्ची डालता है, कितने कितना मसाला डालता है और कब उसको हिलाता है. Therefore, these are things to be learned and not to be taught. Question number 3, but I am going to hurt my family. I talked about this a little earlier, so I will not emphasize. Question number 4, my handcuffs have gotten so strong, and this is for people who are already working somewhere. And we come across a lot of people of that type. करना है लेकिन ये बड़ी तनख्वाह वाली नौकरी छोड़ नहीं सकते. 20 साल का EMI लिया है, 2 नई गाड़ी की खरीदी है, बच्चों को अंग्रेजी स्कूल में भेजना है. But they are realities. Teams make or break ventures. A friendship built on business can be glorious, while a business built on friendship can be murder. Business historian. So what is it that EDCs and EDPs ought to be knowing or doing? One, sensitizing the realities around venture creation. It is hard, needs patience, and success is not guaranteed. It's not as romantic as it appears from a distance. Second, provide easy access to contemporary information data, encourage creative and lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is something that we don't teach. All our engineering curriculum, all our curriculum in schools is very asymmetric in one vertical. We don't teach history and law in an engineering school. We don't teach music in an engineering school. We don't teach sculpture, filmmaking, or humanities in an engineering school. But go and look at the best product companies in the world. Go and look at Logitech, that manufactures a slide changer, and look at the product. And look at Logitech as a company, or for that matter, any tech product company in the US or elsewhere. From a distance, we might all be thinking that they take electronic engineers, computer scientists. Peel that onion, and you will see social scientists, you will see musicians, you will see artists, you will see anthropologists, you will see writers. Why are they all there? Because products need to understand humans who use those products. A line of code does not understand human beings. It is humans who understand humans. We talk a lot about artificial intelligence, but focus on the first word. It is artificial. And that's very important to remember. We cannot remove the human part in technology. That will always remain, and that's very important. Create meaningful projects and innovative ways to access them. The journey is important and not the destination. Go back again to engineering colleges, and you see they are supposed to submit projects. And as luck may have it, on the day when there is a viva, some stupid battery will fail. And all the children who have labored for 6 months, in the 20 minutes that they have, they'll get a minus something. Because our professors have been trained only to look at the destination. They've not been taught how to appreciate the journey of that project. The journey is more important than the destination. That's very, very important for entrepreneurship. Tejashree, please flag me if I am overgoing. I'm done? Okay. So, what I'll do for the next 2 minutes and then call off is convey 2 or 3 key messages. One, that entrepreneurship should not be romanticized. Is it worthwhile for people to get into entrepreneurship? Maybe yes. And I think I'll just go to my last slide. There's one thing that I want people to look at. If they have a way to put up the presentation somewhere, then you can look at it later. Sorry? No, I don't want to. I just want to focus on one last slide. And this is the slide I want to focus on. We need more capable people to consider technology entrepreneurship. Because what more capable people choose to do shapes the nation. Not everybody will be cut out for entrepreneurship. But for those who are cut out, the rest of us need to know how to support them. And what young people choose to do today will shape the future of this nation. We are a nation in transition, like many of our families. In any workplace and in our own houses, we see a minimum of 3 generations. You have a grandfather, you have a father, and you have the son. When I was growing up, 25 years was a generation gap. Today, it's only one engineering batch which is a generation gap. The way the passing out batch thinks and the way the incoming batch thinks, there's already a difference in the way they think. So, generation gap has shrunk. And we need to make them coexist. I just hope that all of you will enable this coexistence. Namaskar, Shabbat hai, may God bless.